Hi everyone, and welcome to your weekly energy update, a general tarot guidance taking a look at how this week's energies are likely to influence our lives both individually and collectively. Now, first of all, from a collective perspective, well, it is pretty much very chaotic. It is so very similar to the theme that we had last week. There is a strong duality, of course, which means that certain events are ultimately going to be interpreted as very positive, favorable, even fortunate, even as divine justice for some people, and the very same events are going to be felt the total opposite for other people. Now, of course, to top all of that up, the chaotic element is also going to manifest from a very physical, material perspective. The hurricanes, the unusual weather phenomenon, the earth movements, changes, those are gonna be ongoing this week as well, at least according to the cards. And at the same time, amongst all this chaos, all this duality, all this highs and lows at the same time, there still is some genuine hope in the world, in the ether even, in our souls, but also in how certain karmic events manifest. Even if we may be one of those people who are really, really caught up in the eye of the storm right now, may that represent, us being in a community, in a place in the world where, important things are happening, or may it be just in our own individual lives. We are still kind of invited to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is not really a fake promise or not really just an illusionary hope, because, we are actually almost at that light. We are almost at, touching distance when we can actually exit the tunnel. So hope is also very, very close to us, whatever that means. And at the same time, this is also supported by the astrology Virgo season. The Sun in Virgo, Mars in Virgo, it kind of means that we have to sacrifice for, what we believe in, for someone who we truly love, for the greater good, for our own good. There is right now an element of sacrifice there that all of us have to embrace and basically work with it, because whatever that sacrifice is, well, ultimately it purifies us, it kind of aligns us to our deeper faith, and that regardless of how that plays out, either on the world stage or in our lives individually, that can only lead to something positive, something really, really useful, not just for us personally, but also for everyone who is around us. Now, after this intro, let's get into the reading and see what the cards have to say for this week. First, I'm going to take a look at the collective perspective and then what it means for us individually. So first of all, we have the world reversed, clarified by the justice and the world. And when we have the world two times, that kind of, highlight in a very unmistakable manner that whatever we are living is profoundly karmic, especially from a collective perspective. And exactly what I said at the beginning, the justice card reversed. The justice is duality. Even the numerological symbolism 11 means 1 and 1. It means two sides. And because it's in reverse position, then first of all, it means a power change, a power shift. And this power change also has ramifications from a legal perspective and even from a divine justice perspective. And whatever happened and still is ongoing in Afghanistan, for example, is such a really clear and unmistakable expression of this energy. What these cards have to say is very simple. Each and every land, of course, has its own rules, has its own laws. It is actually ruled by spirits, by ethereal energies, by, the power of nature which precedes our species for, millions of years even. So that which is the law, that which is justice there, is basically unjudgeable by the rest of the world. Every place, and especially the world card, physical place, the land itself has its own unique energies. So who are we, the rest of the world, to change it? Can we actually change it by force? Well, the karmic reflections of what happened there show us that we cannot. Despite our advanced philosophies, our morality, our sense of justice, our technological advancements, our deep understanding of psychology, still, we cannot forcefully override the laws, the rules of the land. Of course, we can give it a very, very good try, but we also have to surrender when our tries are futile. Each and every land energetically, spiritually, karmically fuels, feeds, supports, makes thrive that which represents it. Even if what actually and who represents it, is not acceptable for the rest of the world, but nature doesn't care. Let me just give an example. Can we truly judge an animal species who adapted to life with extreme brutality? We can simply not judge it. It is nature's mechanism, it is nature's design. She has to take care of it. So the main message here is even justice, fairness, the law, morality, what is fair and what is not fair is so very subjective that many times we just can't even judge. And ultimately everything in the world runs in cycles. There is a cycle when one element is empowered and allowed to be dominant, and there is another cycle when it has to be the opposite. And of course, from a totally different perspective, because this world reversed, clarified by the justice reversed and the world again, can have so very many philosophical, spiritual, karmic, and even down-to-earth meanings. And one of them is history repeats itself, because us as a species, so it doesn't matter who we are as an individual, we're all part of the same species, and in this way we're interconnected, like it or not. It doesn't matter who it is that we are, what choices we made, what spiritual force inspires us, we're still part of the mass. So as a species, history repeats itself because we haven't learned a lesson, or we haven't learned it well enough. And what that lesson is definitely going to be something very symbolic that will play out on the world stage. And this may have something to do with law, with justice, with partnerships and collaboration, some kind of an alliance, or an alliance which already exists and was very strong until this present moment, breaking up. And for example, if this was a military alliance, political alliance, some kind of international alliance, like every relationship, an alliance has to be mutually favorable, it has to be nurtured, it has to be taken care of and not taken for granted, because if you take it for granted, it will ultimately fail. And if this justice reverse represents keeping the peace, peace has to be kept 24/7. You have to work towards it. You have to invest a lot into it, because when this process breaks down even for a short period of time, the alliance and keeping the peace or whatever will definitely crumble. But this also has a really positive connotation as well, because whatever this history repeating itself means, back then when it happened the first time, or another phase when it repeated, there was always a solution. Someone solved it, fixed it. It did have a favorable ending one way or another. So that is also promising that whatever repeats is also going to solve itself one way or another, because the lesson here with the justice reversed is for us to be aware of it, not necessarily as a punishment or to have like very severe repercussions. It is the symbolism of whatever that can be that is more relevant and not necessarily the effects. And of course, the justice reverse can also represent an alliance which has failed in the recent past, or maybe 11 years ago, is gonna be now rekindled. So this is like a dual energy. It simultaneously means one and the other as well. It's both, positive and negative at the same time. Now next we have the Ten of Wands, the Death, and Two of Wands. Now this is what I don't really like from a collective perspective, because from a more philosophical, not so very down-to-earth perspective, the Ten of Wands can represent the burden of faith, the burden of religion, dogma, that which kind of oppresses us without us even realizing it that much. It represses us because ultimately we chose that. We fed it, we empowered it, we gave ourselves over to it. And if faith becomes very unhealthy, well, the Death card and the Two of Wands is self-explanatory. There is gonna be conflict, there is gonna be fight, there is gonna be whose truth and faith is more real. And for those individuals or groups who kind of understand faith, that it has to be physical, real, and not just, a feeling or a state of being, a life view, a perception, a philosophy, well, those will take action in the name of faith. And here I'm going to allow the Death card to be self-explanatory. But, simultaneously, this can also have a really positive meaning as well, because the Ten of Wands, again, burden, but that burden can be, whatever is burdening our collective in the present moment, which is, of course, all the problems, inconveniences due to the coronavirus situation, the economic problems, the weather-related, the earth change-related problems that are causing a lot of disruption in so very many cultures all around the world right now. It can mean those individuals, those people or communities who are extremely vulnerable right now, and the burden is their uncertainty. And in this case, well, the Death card is something truly promising, because it means that the burden can be transformed, it can be lifted off the shoulders of whatever it symbolizes, the world, community, individual. It can mean, with the Two of Wands, action in this sense, charitable action, or other people coming together and offering aid, help, etc. The Death card is the symbolism of Scorpio, so it can mean like a breakthrough, an advancement in science, medical science, a cure, for example, something that ultimately tackles the problem. It doesn't solve it totally, but the Two of Wands, there is tools to work with, there is hope, and there is action. And Scorpio is also adaptability, mutation, transformation, so that symbolically represents some kind of solutions. May they come from within, adaptability, resourcefulness, figuring something out, how to not just survive, but also, live life, even though there is a lot of burden in the world out there. And yet another expression of this energy, well, the Ten of Wands can ultimately mean restrictions of movement, freedom, travel, of course. The death card means, well, people are going to try and transform that, end the restrictions and the burdens, but how? Two of Wands, by standing up for themselves, even fighting, one will opposing the other will. So this ultimately represents protests or legal action or people demanding their rights for free movement, travels, etc. Now we have the Ace of Coins, the Star, and the Six of Cups. Now, collectively speaking, I'm pretty sure that this means humanitarian help, aid, offering resources, sacrificing from, let's say, one nation's countries, whatever, excess of resources and offering it to someone who is in need. But this can also play out on a smaller scale, country helping its citizens, the vulnerable, any kind of humanitarian efforts that will ultimately bestow hope and well-being to those who benefit from it. This can also represent, where governments have strategies where they help businesses, startups, certain transformations in methodology and modus operandi which took place perhaps at the very beginning of the year are now going to be executed, and that will represent solutions, hopeful outcomes, starting up business, commerce, the flow of resources, or it can also represent like a boost with employment, people seeking and actually finding jobs, and or those who seek jobs are gonna get help. This can also represent like lowering of taxes and simplifying legislation, making it much easier to get work and be able to keep more of that income, the money. And from a psychological perspective, this is quite positive because it means like people working very hard for the future of their children. And finally, we have the Ten of Coins reversed and the High Priestess reversed. Well, this is pretty obvious. It means some kind of revelation, secret coming out. But where that secret is, of course, subject of controversy, of conspiracy, maybe a result of some kind of big investigation, etc., that will shake everything up. But this as well is not anything new, really. Now, from an individual perspective, this is where the cards have a much deeper meaning. The World reversed with the Justice reversed and clarified by the World in upright position. This can mean some very, very favorable karmic events for some people out there, especially those people who experience certain losses, who experience certain life crisis moments, even before 2019, and these people worked so very hard to recover, to do everything and anything in their power to regenerate, fix, heal whatever that loss was. It can be divorce, it can be a health problem, an issue with one's physical body. It can mean losing a house, losing a job, a career, income. It can simply be a very, very long-lasting dark night of the soul, because at that time when it has taken place in your life, it might have felt like a divine wrath, bad luck, almost like being cursed. So for some of you who have experienced this 3-4 years ago, so as I say, before 2019, before the COVID and all of that started, before the world crisis, the world change, well, for you guys, one way or another, divine justice can turn things around for you. All your efforts, all your sacrifice, all your hard work that you invested in yourself, may it be psychological, spiritual, physical, it doesn't really matter, to regenerate, to heal, to fix, to rediscover yourself, to have a fresh start, a new beginning. It can just simply strike as a lightning bolt where something suddenly happens and your closure, but also your new beginning will be almost like delivered on a silver plate. But when I say delivered, it's easy in the sense that it manifests now, but all the work and effort and incomprehensible resilience and patience that you invested into this, well, that is payment enough in order for something just to happen as suddenly, as quickly as the loss was. So for some very lucky, and even this lucky is so subjective, if you take a look at what you suffered just a couple of years ago. But anyway, for some people, this will be a moment of karmic discharge when the closure but also the new beginning takes place at the same time. For other people, this can manifest as finding a way to free yourself from a karmic burden. That karmic burden may be a prolonged service that you had to provide for someone who you're karmically connected to. And this has to be like a family member, parent, child, sister, brother, soulmate, best friend. So someone as you would regard as family. So it may be that maybe not you personally, but that person went through something hellish, and either you had to support them materially or psychologically, just stand at their side, make sure that they're as okay as it's possible, like a spiritual babysitting, if this makes sense. For it is now for that person who the situation ends, freeing you from that karmic obligation, from the spiritual or material or whatever babysitting. And another different way of how this energy can manifest, an older injustice that you suffered, and whatever that was, it impacted your life greatly. May it be again a divorce or something that you might have lost, or a situation where you ended up being the sacrificial goat, if this makes sense. Divine justice will come into play and that situation will turn around. You will have your justice, because that world reverse can represent unfinished karma, a karmic debt where you are the beneficiary. And maybe until this moment it was up to those people to make it right, and if they failed, well, the universe will do it for them. But your part in this ends because justice will be delivered to you. How they will repay it back to the universe is no longer your problem. Or it can mean that a person, someone who owes you something, finally will take action and do something to make it right. Anyway, it means an ending and a beginning at the same time. Now this 10 of Wands with the Death and 2 of Wands in upright position is also very favorable news, because this 10 of Wands is some kind of karmic burden, but a different one than the previous pile of cards. This is more like something that you have to do for yourself. This means struggle, either with your career, with your life path, with discovering who it is that you are, what kind of life you want for yourself. So this is something very, very personal, where it might be your inner force that oppressed you and not necessarily anything on the outside. And this 10 of Wands ultimately means a lot of effort and work put into this, but where that work is more like either spiritual or psychological, your efforts to understand the situation, to understand the self, to seek your truth, to see what's blocking you, to see why everything in life feels so much like a burden. Where this Death card can represent Pluto, the hand of faith, and this 2 of Wands can represent options. It can represent opportunities, something that is divinely offered to you, a tool, a willpower, an idea, another person coming, an ally helping you, in order for you to overcome this 10 of Wands, this burden. And also this energy is quick, So this isn't like months. But of course, neither is it next week is gonna be completed 100%. This is where it is next week, where you will be able to identify what fate gives you, again, Death card Pluto, to overcome that burden. May it be a person, an idea, an opportunity, something that you can actually work with. This is where you have power finally, after maybe 10 years, over that burden. This is where the key to a decision, to a choice, is finally in your hands. You're in a tactical position where you can finally overcome that 10 of 1 situation, where you are rising above it, not just philosophically or symbolically, but, in a very concrete manner. Even if this is just an inner burden, a psychological blockage, let's say, you will have the power to basically overcome it. Do that, an action, a choice, something either way related to an action, even if it's a negative action, as in terminating something or no longer, let's say, fueling something, whatever. You will have this position of power to change that situation. So it begins next week. And this Ace of Coins, the Star with the Six of Cups. This is the energy of hope. This is also the energy of history repeating itself in your own personal life, in your karmic path. But where I say history repeats itself in the most favorable way possible. Because take a look, contemplate a little bit about your past. Whenever you were in a tougher situation in life, whenever you really needed help or encouragement or support, especially either materially with the Ace of Coins, or when your life was in ruins or chaos, because the Ace of Coins can simply represent someone's stability, someone's structure. So when your life had either very, very fragile structures which needed urgent reinforcements, or you went through a big life change and you needed to, basically find your new normality, if that makes sense, your new routines. So whenever that happened to you in the past, either the universe, a person, something came to your help, and the help itself left you with a really positive memory, with a nostalgic moment. The Six of Cups, how did you feel when you were almost like miraculously helped? When everything turned to something positive? When you had a breakthrough or an achievement or something that left a really positive imprint in your life? That is also history repeating itself, in the sense that the same kind of really pleasant memory is gonna be in the making next week. So basically, hope fulfills itself. Your optimism pays off. Maybe not precisely, like mathematically, in the same way that it did in the past, where it is the feeling of being helped, hope fulfilling is what matters, not necessarily the details of how. And finally, with this 10 of Coins reversed and the High Priestess reversed, this is a sacrifice. This is like working with the power of our unconscious, but in a consciously steered way, in order to uproot ourselves from our karmic inheritance. May this be our families of origin and the karma that they have in this world. May it be our local communities, our culture, our city. So basically that which historically binds us to the karma of either family, place, etc. And as we're uprooting, as we're not necessarily cutting cords in an aggressive way, terminating, but simply taking that karma and refining it. By doing that, we basically serve everyone and everything. Not only do we free ourselves from it, but also those people perhaps who cannot be totally freed from it, We make their burdens less, easier, lighter. This is so very in theme with Virgo season, where we give something, sacrifice something, share something, and don't see it as a negative kind of servitude, but rather we do it lovingly, willingly, with a lot of hope and understanding that we purify so much with our actions. Sometimes that purification can be literal, physical. You clean up, let's say, a place. You throw away clutter. You redecorate it. You renew it. It can also mean psychologically, finally we stop grieving. We stop licking our wounds. We finally accept our losses and able to find the strength to move forward. Or we understand that no one can be taken for granted, not family, not friends, not even acquaintances, not even a total stranger. So we take action to honor them in the now. What we do to others, we do to ourselves. And when we lend another person, regardless of who it is, help, even just support, even just sympathy, we kind of make ourselves worthy to receive the same. 10 of coins reversed with the High Priestess reverse, it means sanctifying materiality. A truly rich and wealthy person is wealthy because they share, because they give. And by giving, they inspire other people. And also by giving, they kind of invite the universe to give them that much more because they put it into the flow, into the circulation. And as divine guidance, we have the desire and the hero. Well, this is such a beautiful message because it says that all of us are in certain moments of our lives, in certain situations, one way or another, all of us are heroes to another person, to another soul, to an animal, for example. And this week is definitely going to be like a celestial invitation to be that hero, to be that Perseus riding on the Pegasus to help a person who might be shackled by, forces, may they be inner or outer forces, they cannot overcome. This desire and hero represents that by living our faith, by living our highest principles, embodying them, taking action, basically sanctifies us. Desire, for example, desire can be extremely negative. It can be extremely selfish. It can turn into an obsession, or it can actually be fueled by jealousy or envy. That is the most lowest expression of desire. And no matter who it is that we are, we will also have moments like those in our lives. But at the same time, there is the higher expression of desire when we desire to be a hero in another person's story, and simply desiring that. Whenever that feeling is born in your heart of hearts, immediately you open yourself up to the universe. It is almost like an unwritten invitation to the divine forces to act through you. In more, let's say, biblical words, let's say, it's almost like you inviting the divine spirit to possess you and take action through you. Immediately the divine power will guide you exactly where you need to be that hero. So these two cards suggest that there is going to be a lot of positive examples, a lot of compassion, a lot of solidarity, a lot of really important gestures out there in the world and also in our individual lives, when either we become a hero for another person, we become hero for ourselves, or someone out there comes to our rescue, comes to our help, and they become our heroes. They say that the divine works through people mainly. That's why basically humankind is a social species. So this might be one of those weeks when we can see the divine working through others, fulfilling maybe a desire of ours, coming to our help, answering our prayer in a very clear and unmistakable manner, and that ultimately builds trust. It reinforces faith. Even if it manifests just symbolically, well, it is still an undoubtable proof that the divine does listen, that the divine is actually very much alive, not just within us, but within everyone alive today. Well, this concludes today's reading. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you found this useful and a little bit inspirational. If you'd like to support my work, you can donate on the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, thank you again everyone, and wish you a magical and really prosperous and miraculous week. Until next time, bye for now.